While there are thousands of webcomics, no other can compare to the bizarre legacy of Sinfest. This once popular cartoon started off 30 years ago as a well-drawn, middle-of-the-road, relatable affair. But as time went on, fans would see the man behind it slowly decline into madness, as Sinfest would become an ardent feminist publication in the 2010s that was obsessed with fighting against prostitution and men's rights activists. What's even crazier is that in recent times, the illustrator has taken another 180 turn to the alt-right, with the strips now riddled with attacks on people such as Ben Shapiro, who he believes are controlling the world. So how on earth did this once titan of webcomics become a fringe crackpot conspiracy theorist? Well, after reading through much of his decades-long run of work, I started to see patterns as I watched a man slowly lose his mind as the years went on. But before we go any further in today's video, I want to give a shout out to today's sponsor, AkiFlow. As a person who's very busy with most of my job revolving around staying organized online, this is a program that allows me to focus in and make sure I get everything I need done within the day. AkiFlow is an intuitive time-blocking platform that streamlines the task scheduling process, enabling users to maximize their productivity and make their work more efficient. Whether you're an entrepreneur, busy professional, or student, you need help staying organized and productive. What I like about AkiFlow is it takes everything, including personal and professional inboxes, your calendar views, tasks that you have on your phone, and anything else listed on any other platform on a mobile app, and puts it all in one place so you could tell everything you need done in your life all in one centralized location. And if you need anything else added or removed from your calendar, you can use the virtual assistant in the app to do it for you just by asking it. And it works really well. Something else I like about this tool as a person who tends to procrastinate is it will fill in my calendar when I don't have appointments with other tasks I've told it I need to do, so I make sure I have the most productive day possible. And the app will even communicate with other people you have calls with to make sure that they're on the same page as you. So if you're a person that wants to be more organized and productive, I highly recommend using AkiFlow. And to try it for yourself, please click the link in the description down below. While Sinfest has over 30 years of history, not much is actually known about the creator, Tatsuya Ishida. The artist is quite reclusive, sharing few details about his life. The closest thing there is to a biography is a thread by Reddit user Trim345, who gained as much information as he could find. Tatsuya was likely born around 1972 and grew up in Los Angeles, California. The young boy's love of comics started once he read his first Peanuts paperback. I knew that this was it. This was my future. Something about the simplicity and solitary nature of the medium appealed to me. While his family lived in poverty, Tatsuya's imagination kept his spirits high. He grew up reading Marvel as well as strips like Calvin and Hobbes, which left a huge impression on his art style. Ishida quickly stood out at school in more ways than one. Back in junior high school, I used to cut my own hair. There were patches sticking out like weeds, bald spots peeking through, errant strands all over. I had serious hang-ups about this, and it probably had something to do with the fact I couldn't afford a haircut. Despite this, he was quite popular among peers, even getting voted most talented and most likely to succeed in 9th grade. His school's yearbook also shows some of his early illustrations, as well as the only picture of him on the internet. Upon graduating high school, he enrolled at the University of California. This is where a 19-year-old Tatsuya created the first iteration of Sinfest. It was published in the Daily Bruin, a campus paper with the earliest known strip dated October 1991. This would introduce us to Squiggly Swine Buckets, a literal sexist pig. It parodied the decision by a rival feminist newspaper to publish a full-spread artist's rendition of an open vagina. Only problem with this is how are we gonna get it through the censors? Just label all the parts and say it's education. Even back then, he put out comics near daily. This let him stoke the flames of the ongoing backlash. First you put a vagina on your newspaper, and now you're complaining about the school directory cover. They really should have exercised some decency and used a pussy portrait instead. Haha! Anyway, to all you feminists who made your cause look like the petty, pointless endeavor that it is, thank you so much! Tatsuya enjoyed pushing buttons, riffing off a wide range of diverse issues. It's not hard to see why it struck a chord amongst the student body. Sinfest had an anti-authoritarian edge while not aligning itself to any specific group. That year, tensions were high following the Rodney King police brutality case. A video of the beating was released, sparking outrage across the country. This included calls for civilian review boards to conduct oversight of police. Well, one junior at UCLA named Willie disagreed, writing an article telling them to stop crying. Those police officers put their lives on the line every day for every citizen out there. Maybe if communities would spend more time dealing with criminals like Rodney King and a little less time criticizing the police department, there wouldn't be any confrontations in the first place. This received a lot of criticism, including a strip by Tatsuya calling Willie a Nazi. It's pretty effective as the dialogue is largely the author's original words. It's funny how the media doesn't roll the tape to show what King was doing before the police got there. He was speeding, you know. Following this, the two had a public back and forth. Willie clarified she was a woman before stating her offense. "I don't appreciate being depicted as a Nazi just because you and I don't agree on a subject." In response, the cartoonist made an updated version fixing her gender and other language she didn't like. An early reoccurring gag in Sinfest is the rivalry between God and the devil. This led Tatsuya to an article accusing him of anti-Christian sentiments. Several readers wrote in his defense, pointing out the nuance of his satire. "I don't believe Tatsuya's cartoons were attacking all Christians as a whole. If you are not like the character in the cartoon, then you should not take it to be directed at you." If you couldn't guess, Sinfest was a part of Viewpoint, the Daily Bruin's political and social commentary column. It was popular precisely for the drama, stirring debate on controversial topics. Of course, part of what made Sinfest stand out was its artwork. The comic used a variety of different styles, showing his versatility. As the strip gained its own identity, he started doing more than one strip a day. The main character ostensibly became a Calvin lookalike named Slick, who oftentimes served as his self-insert. Slick evolves into a girl-chasing wannabe pimp, with help from his brainy sidekick, Criminy. In this iteration, he's some kind of futuristic politician, although that aspect didn't stick around for long. An early story arc from this era was The Voyage to Hell, inspired by Spaceman Spiff. It showed a lot of potential, but at this stage it was merely a stepping stone to professional work. While the dates are a bit fuzzy during this time period, in 1993 Tatsuya started getting a few minor mainstream comic gigs, graduating a year later. The last known Sinfest from his college days notes that he had to stay an extra semester. Counselors said you need to take a couple more BEs. But I'm all set to work full-time at the Gap! Upon completing his degree, he began working with Dark Horse Comics, a well-known indie publisher. Tats was hired to work on their Godzilla series, collaborating with the esteemed Arthur Adams. Adams thumbnailed all the pages and sent him personal reference material he never returned. Evidently, Sinfest was still on the cartoonist's mind, as he snuck references of his OG characters into the final product. Tatsuya illustrated 7 Godzilla issues before moving on to G.I. Joe Extreme. This is where his work got sloppier, as he recalled, running on fumes creatively. "I botched G.I. Joe Extreme. I did a real slipshod job on that one. Several pages were so poorly drawn that they had to get another guy to redo them entirely." On another occasion, he was caught plagiarizing. He later acknowledged being a nightmare for editors. Tatsuya was burnt out, despite promising opportunities on the horizon. In late 1996, he got the chance to pencil an X-Men story for Marvel. But days before the deadline, he called up his editor to quit. "I can't draw anymore. My heart's not in it. The fire was gone." And just like that, his comic book career fizzled out. Tats has stated he did animation work after this. His IMDb lists multiple commercial tie-ins as well as, bizarrely, Our Friend Martin. You know, that movie that they would show in class about 2 kids going back in time to meet Martin Luther King Jr.? Well, he's credited as a character designer. But it wasn't long until these gigs dried up too, which led him to quote-unquote rock bottom. At the turn of the century, Tatsuya was broke, out of work, and had alienated all his friends. It's not clear how the last one occurred, but he admitted spite fueled his next endeavor. "The first 7 years it was coffee and revenge. That's what kept me going. My attitude was, I'll show them all." This led him to revisit Sinfest for the first time in 6 years, creating 50 brand new strips. While in the past, getting him out there would have required a publisher, Tatsuya saw potential in this new thing called the World Wide Web. With this, he learned HTML and set up a page on GeoCities for the revival. The earliest post is from January 2000. He started posting 7 times a week, and has rarely faltered from this schedule in the past quarter century since. Each strip only took about 3 hours to make, and the 50 comic head start made that a lot easier to maintain. With no oversight, the artist took full advantage of the lack of censorship, satirizing the literary industry and embracing edgy humor he later would regret. That often included toying with stereotypes like the blaxploitation funk Bible. Eat, this fried chicken is my body. Drink, this Schultz malt liquor is my blood. Tatsuya ridiculed everyone from Christian fundamentalists to feminists. The strip Matriarchy has a society ruled by women where men are forcibly castrated. Slick commands men to stand up to girls and stop groveling for sex. Of course, it's tongue-in-cheek and not a serious political critique. A huge draw to Sinfest would be its variety, having several different sets of characters. There were Pooch and Percy, an extroverted dog and a cynical cat, as well as the continued rivalry between God and the devil. This iteration has God staying in the sky, although he talks to Earth using puppets. Their conflict grew in scope over time, being tied to the main continuity. Very funny, God. You mock me and my existence, but I didn't ask to be born. Loser. You're just jealous because I'm more popular than you. Talk to the hand. Oh, real mature. You're just gonna ignore me? Is that it? Talk to the hand. Talk to the hand. You're a big fat evil loser. That takes us to the main cast, which brought back Squiggly, Criminy, and Slick. Slick became a perverted but well-meaning loser, bonding with Squiggly over being hedonists. A month into the revival, the comic introduced a new character, a young beat poet named Monique. Slick and Monique meet for the first time after a show, leading to this exchange. Listen, I'm gonna go hit on that Jamaican guy with the huge dreads. If he's not into it, you wanna make out? Yes. Cool. Hold my bag. Yoo-hoo, Rasta boy. The next few strips have Slick talking about his love for quote-unquote sluts, using Monique as an example. In the early days, Tatsuya's site had a page with short bios of all the characters. It's pretty tongue-in-cheek, with Criminy's age listed 10, maybe 34. Here's what he wrote for Monique. Age 16, aka It Girl. Slut tramp hoe. Her deal? Jailbait. Low fidelity. Many tramp-like qualities. But deep down inside, she's still a tramp. Monique's character changed a lot throughout the strip's run in tandem with Tatsuya's personal views. In the beginning, she's Slick's hot, sassy friend, who could embrace her sexuality without feeling exploited. While she likes the attention, she isn't interested in a relationship with him, and the two's quarreling became a major draw to the comic. So what do you think? This is totally about me. What? Raging with testosterone. He delord oh my erogenous zone. That is so me. It is not you. Hey, relax. I'm not gonna get a big head or anything. Give it back. I'm used to chicks worshipping me. This dynamic alongside riffs on pop culture made Sinfest an immediate hit on the early internet. No other webcomic had this level of frequency, competence, and artistry. While yes, I've highlighted some of the funny cringe, a lot of it holds up if you're into that sort of humor, and it's not hard to appreciate the creativity on display. For example, the use of calligraphy. The site had a counter called Futility Watch, which tracked the number of times the strip was rejected by newspaper syndicates. It ended on 11 letters. While he didn't have luck in the mainstream, the internet was a different story. By June of 2000, Sinfest had 10,000 hits per day. That summer, he moved his site off GeoCities with help from KeenSpots, the leading portal at the time for webcomics. They hosted his site and fan form for free. Tatsuya already found himself a devoted fanbase, speaking to them on his blog, Notes from the Resistance. This offered rare insight into the enigmatic cartoonist, sourcing many of the few known details about his life. The response has been tremendous. Your letters of support and encouragement make this whole endeavor easier and more pleasant. Mucho arigato. And special shoutouts to the KeenSpot crew who took a chance signing this etiquette challenge strip. You know it's just a matter of time before the thought police come raiding this site and snatch up Little Slick away and reunite him with his Cuban pappy, right? Tatsuya would end up getting into hot water online for an entirely different set of reasons other than jokes. You see, another promising up-and-comer was Dave Kelly, better known as Shmorky. Shmorky grew popular on Something Awful, making comics and short flash animations for the forum. He would also adopt the site's pointed satirical attitude, not afraid to take jabs. Throughout late 2000, the artist began posting Otaku Fae, a parody of online webcomics. While it combined a few other series, it was primarily directed at Sinfest. He copied its format, had stand-ins for the main cast, and mimicked other quirks of the strip. So, this is our first strip. Will we introduce ourselves? Maybe. I'll go get the others. This is gonna be fat. This comic needs some bitches. This sparked a ton of backlash, with many coming to Sinfest's defense arguing the strip was a lot more than just a comic. The way it was discussed reflects how many viewed his success as a symbol of independent art. This led Shmorky to receive both hate mail and death threats, which he wrote about on November 10th, 2000. Tatsuya Ishida reacted to it in a rather upsetting manner. He said that it crossed the line of parody into plagiarism, and that it was an illegal act. I asked him myself if he wanted me to take down the sites, but he did not respond. I am not a mean-spirited guy, and I do not want a bad reputation. Shmorky apologized again on several other platforms, which seemed to end the controversy. While public opinion took Tatsuya's side, over time many began to side-eye the idea of suing someone over a clear parody protected by fair use, especially given how loudly Tats detested so-called thought crimes. I mean, he himself jokes about how his main character looks like Calvin from Calvin and Hobbes, and by that logic, many of his own strips may constitute copyright infringement. What's next? Sonichu is plagiarizing Nintendo and Sega? In the long run, the incident had little to no impact on his career. Sinfest only gained momentum as the new millennium progressed. He started attending San Diego Comic-Con, managing to avoid photos despite a close call in 2002. This excerpt was written by a person who tried to snap a pic of the elusive Cartoonist. Here you can see the first ever online picture of the elusive creator of Sinfest. Well, okay, so we didn't get his picture. My wife tried, but he was rather embarrassed by it, so she quickly moved the camera up before it went off. We promised him we wouldn't take another one, so this is all you can get. Regardless of his anonymity, the comic proved to be a profitable endeavor, and that year he released the first self-published collection. Tatsuya reflected that the first 600 strips were a barometer of his emotional states during the period. He went further, calling himself unhinged and totally off the chain. Say you blow up and become a big star. Would you use your influence to crush all the people who ever dissed you? I'd crush them. I'd crush them all. The sheer amount of content there is to Sinfest is part of why there isn't a ton of comprehensive material about its full 30-year run. I'm going to try my best to distill the contents of the comic as best as I can. Let's start back at 2000, year one of the comic revival. In July, Criminy and Monique talked to God before meeting a Jesus fanatic called Seymour. After this, interactions between the main cast and the religious characters become common. Many were just to set up jokes ribbing Christianity, which for many was enough to establish the comic as overtly liberal. Incidentally, the machismo of Slick and Squiggly became a lot more obviously tongue-in-cheek. You know, maybe we're ought to be more sensitive toward women. Get in touch with our feminine side, and unlock the tenderness within. By golly, yes, let's be total complete pussies. I just want to let my feelings show. Let your inner self shine through, yeah. Whatever, as if. While most of the storylines and major characters introduced were jokes, weaved throughout are small, quiet moments which showed they had depth beyond their archetypes. The comic felt very self-aware, and it's easy to see why readers grew to love the banter of his characters. All these terrorists and hate-mongers got serious chick issues. They all start down the path cause they couldn't get laid. So you're gonna turn into a terrorist, all because of his unrequited love for me? Sigh. I'm starting to see why they don't let their women talk. Over time, Tatsuya got more comfortable using the comic to react to real life. They'd reference headlines about the age of irony in today's youth. An early example paid tribute to the then recent 9/11 terrorist attacks in what is likely the most tasteful reaction from an online webcomic. With regards to political commentary, he didn't take many hard stances early on. When he did cover a controversial issue, it was usually to the point of absurdity with no clear alignment to either side. Even his criticism of religion was gentle, prioritizing comedy, which, to be clear, I don't think is a bad thing. A lot of people don't believe in you. They say you're just a myth, a fairy tale, a legend, a figment of our imagination. Cool, I'm a legend. Mwahahaha! You're unbelievable, you know that? Unlike the first iteration, which prioritized outrage, the characters were now given time to breathe. As winter 2001 rolled around, Sinfest started to feel very slice of life. 2002 started with Slick going on his first date in years, failing miserably. There were a lot of meditations on love, with a reoccurring theme being Monique's desire for something deeper. Slick, on the other hand, just wanted to get laid. What is it you chicks want anyway? Lots of stuff. Love, friendship, happiness, respect, understanding, a sense of purpose, hope for the future, and world peace. What are you auditioning for, Miss America? Ooh, I want that too. Tatsuya also found his stride with the theater vignettes, where he got to do more out-there plots like the Pimp Ninja. 2002 also introduced Little Evil, a young devil worshipper at odds with Seymour. He tried to commit evil acts which amount to petty crimes. To not get too ahead of myself, this planted the seeds for later storylines. For now, though, the focus was on romance as Slick, Criminy, and Monique all yearned for their soulmate. This marked the start of the Golden Age, establishing a status quo that continued over a decade. I'm bored. Quick, do something, entertain me, go! I'm not your performing monkey, I have my dignity. That was sort of funny, I guess. I'm totally serious. The year ended with Slick trying and failing to get Monique to sleep with him, and began with him drunkenly ranting at the bar. You know what? I do like Monique. She's my butterfly, my flower boo-boo snuggle pussy. I love that silly bitch. He ends up hitting it off with a woman at the bar named Ginger, as Monique walks in after ruminating on her own loneliness. Oh my god, Slick really is talking with a girl. Go Slick. She's smiling, she's laughing, she's flirting. Close the deal. With my Slicky. What was that? Nothing. She's hot. Yup. I mean, she's really hot. Yup. She might even be hotter than me. Yup. What? I mean, no. You hotter. Way hotter. She ugly. The two almost fight before Ginger reveals what Slick said about her earlier. Then she leaves on her own volition. By then, Slick had passed out due to embarrassment. The way the so-called Loverboy arc ended led most to presume the two were officially dating. However, the characters weren't seen again until over 2 weeks later. Slick wakes up with no memory of the previous night, and is confused when Monique teases him about it. Then Squiggly informs him what happened. So Monique thinks I'm in love with her? That's what you said. So she's all smug and superior and self-satisfied? I guess so. Good God, that's the way it's always been. With all the cards on the table, he declared he would pretend it never happened. Indeed, things simply went back to normal as Slick continued his hopeless attempts at pickup artistry. 2003 saw Tatsuya taking more overt political stances. When the US invaded Iraq, he took time to acknowledge geopolitical realities. One comic criticizes the Department of Defense. The object of the game is world domination. Bomb third world countries. Invade France. Go nuts! Other commentary was embedded into the story, like the presence of thought police. Earlier, I mentioned a gag called The Matriarchy about a dystopian society ruled by women. Well, he actually revisited the idea annually, with this year's arc fleshing out the dimension with Matrix analogies. It wasn't long until Monique grew politically interested, writing a poem in favor of gay marriage in 2004. What y'all think of my poem? I got all political and shit. Yeah, it was cool. So you don't have a problem with gay marriage? Why should I? Marriage itself is gay. What? As far as I'm concerned, getting married by definition means you're gay. This same year, he also posted a lot on his blog. When George W. Bush was re-elected, he expressed his disillusionment publicly. I believe most Americans voted for John Kerry. I don't believe their results. I don't believe that gender panic and moral values caused Americans to vote for more war, more torture, more corporate power. I don't believe Americans turned their backs on the world. This is my article of faith. This is my faith-based opinion. This is my gut instinct. Looking at it all in retrospect, it doesn't feel like his views changed around this time so much as he just started articulating them publicly. 2005 was a turning point for the comic, at least according to Tatsuya himself. He specifically noted Come Back, a 16-strip story about the friendship between his cat and dog. It marked when the comic shifted towards warmth and tenderness. He recalled, quote, quitting coffee and revenge, hoping to adopt a much more productive outlook on life. Slick and Monique end up going out on a date, after he finally gets over his ego and asks her sincerely. While this doesn't end up working out, Slick started to feel a lot more human, which seemed to represent himself changing outlooks. If you grew up reading the comic, it must have been really cool seeing the characters grow up and change with you. This is where I'm going to stop breaking Sinfest down year by year, as he kinda got into a groove. I will, however, read a strange blog post he wrote in 2006. This Latin babe pulls up with her cart and starts putting her underwear and frilly lingerie in the dryer next to mine. Now, I don't know if it was the lacy undergarments or the heat from the dryer or what, but right then and there I pop a boner. Can't we all relate? Sinfest left Keenspot, the webcomic portal, shortly after. The site got updated with a redesign and a new separate fan form. On July 16, 2006, the first strip in color came out. This is notable because he has never missed a single day since. Tatsuya became popular enough to offer signatures at Comic-Con, where surprisingly it seems every single person obliged him in not taking pictures. It appeared like the comic could only go up from here, with each year always improving on the last. But to those paying attention, there were signs of what was to come. He started using terms like the male gaze, and his outlook on things like adult films changed. But this wouldn't significantly impact the comic until 2008. This is when most agree the first warning signs appeared. The year began with Lady Liberty and her pimp Uncle Sam. It quickly fueled storylines involving the FBI and other government mistrust. For some time, jokes lost priority in favor of social commentary. It's like they're daring us to revolt. He later stated a major factor to this was the financial crisis. I think the reason the strip went so politics-heavy was the magnitude of the situation. The collective anxiety over the financial crisis was pretty intense. When Congress was voting on the $700 billion bill, it felt like the whole country was about to take to the streets. Sinfest wasn't suddenly awful, but it was enough of a problem that readers complained. Tatsuya obliged, limiting his social commentary, at least for a while. An exception to this was a series of comics supporting the then-candidate Barack Obama. His first appearance was on September 14, 2008, as a guitar-playing Barack star upstaged Sarah Piglin. The next morning, black man musically assaults white woman. Charisma, a form of voodoo? The next came after he was elected, depicting white man's worst nightmare. Obama learning about African American history. Brother Antoine, it's Bama. He's been awakened. Patch him through. The third has him meeting Jesus, only to be shocked that he's white. These depictions were later scrutinized by those who felt it was out of touch or unintentionally racist. A particular comic he'd regret this year had Slick meeting a real-life gay. Oh my, how provocative. Zoinks, a real-life gay. That's a big dog. Need some help? And he's hitting on me. Fight or flight. Fight or flight. Honey, relax. You're hyperventilating. Tatsuya started to question his own views and if he was living up to his values. This mostly affected Monique, who became a radical political activist. Her beliefs slowly shifted from a generic pro-peace stance to more defined views. This character arc was set up throughout 2009, along with other important plot lines for the comic's next phase. It starts in January with the Devil's Booth Babes, two demons named Fuchsia and Blue. The seductresses wreak havoc on the main characters. This leads to a back and forth where the two question Monique's behavior. Would you like to be a booth babe? You just lounge around and be sexy. I can do that in my sleep. Exactly. So why do it for free? You can make a mint toying with men. I do it for the sheer love of the craft. So naive. The conflict evolves into a pillow fight before Jesus arrives to cure them of being a hellspawn. Odd, my powers don't work on this demon. I'm not a demon! The devil tries to turn them back, finding difficulty with Fushia, as she secretly had a crush on Criminy. This began her drift away from Satan. Criminy helped Fushia become her own person, a journey that unfolded over the next few years. Sinfest fans were invested, as it seemed like the comic would only get better with time. As the author would put during this era, numbers have been growing steadily, with a sharp uptick during the Criminy-Fushia storyline. Their romance really seems to resonate with people. That year, the site reached 2 million hits a month. Its popularity led Tatsuya to get a book deal completely out of the blue. He received an email from Dark Horse Media asking to republish his old collections, the very publishers he'd worked for in the 90s. They released 2 volumes together, which he praised for their production quality. Despite this, he also admitted to being very difficult to work with. I was a nightmare for editors. Even now, working on the Sinfest books, I've already run through 2 editors at Dark Horse. I fear I exacerbated them beyond tolerable limits. The promotion of these volumes led to some of the few other interviews we have with the cartoonist. He praised his fans as terrific and respectful of his privacy. He then revealed his plan to never quit. I plan to draw Sinfest till I physically can't. I can't promise any happy endings, only happy moments. When it came to writing the comic, there was no long-term plans. So all readers could do was hope that the characters they'd come to know and love would get some kind of satisfying resolution. What we received next instead was a bastardization of the comic's original vision, as the cartoonists behind them went through a baffling political awakening, alienating the audience he spent the last decade building. Throughout 2011, Tatsuya began to openly express writer's block. Devil girls, flying pigs, hellholes, how am I going to write my way out of this mess? The hell was I thinking? While Sinfest was successful, he didn't feel proud of it. A comic from this era has him praising other works in comparison to his own. Then he shows himself at work. No, that's no good. Too pretentious. Too cutesy. Not truthful enough. I gotta show life as it is. Raw and brutal. This is where most believe he decided to start a soft reboot of the comic. Retcons happened and characters changed. Early Sinfest reflected his attitude in a lot of ways he would regret. Tatsuya even apologized for several specific jokes in a strip titled Contract, showing that his perspective had changed a lot since he started all those years ago. Misogyny, arrogance, racism, sexism, ignorance, homophobia, delusion, hubris, stereotypes, bigotry. Tatsuya then looks at the contract. I, Cartoonist, hereby agree to relinquish ownership of my soul in exchange for fame, fortune, and fangirls. Something a bit harder to address was his characterization of Slick and Monique. He originally viewed Slick's attitude as harmless and wrote Monique as enjoying objectification. This changed as he engrossed himself into radical feminist literature, questioning his fundamental beliefs. Some of the works he's referenced include Adria Dworkin and Valerie Solanas, the latter being best known for shooting Andy Warhol. It was in this era that Monique starts to feel exploited and can't shake it off, worrying she reinforced the patriarchy. For the time being, this mostly stayed in the background until 2011. That's when readers were introduced to a new character they called Trike Girl, as she went officially unnamed for a year and a half. Trike Girl is near universally agreed upon as the moment Sinfest jumped the shark. There had been 11 years of nearly daily comics up until this point, a status quo readers had come to know and love. This character marked the beginning of a brand new era. The reason why is because in universe, this new edition would end up leading the charge to many of the drastic changes Tats wanted to make. Trike Girl first appeared on October 3rd, 2011, colliding with the main cast immediately. Her function to the story was clear, to disrupt the status quo. There's nothing wrong with admiring the female form. No mansplaining. Mansplaining? You are awash in male privilege and heteronormative assumptions about gender, performativity. Hetero what? Heteronormative assumptions about gender performativity. In English, please. Look it up, dude, bro. At first, people thought this was a troll, but as weeks passed by, it was clear this would become the scrappy do of Sinfest. The character most affected by the run-in with her was Monique. It's revealed Trike Girl is part of a matriarchal organization called the Sisterhood, whose goal is to liberate women from the patriarchy. Bare midriff, patriarchal sanctioned fashion trope that encourages the objectification of women. This has been a consciousness-raising message from the Sisterhood. Power to the oppressed. Stay strong, sister. Monique takes the red pill, opening her eye to the gender matrix, which is quite the opposite of what the red pill would mean a few years later in the online culture war, I might add. Trike Girl is there to guide her. Most people can't see the patriarchy. They're too immersed. Until they are freed, they are agents of the system, colluders. Am I a colluder? Everyone is, but you're awake now. You can see. This extended metaphor ends up taking over the entire story, much to the dismay of those invested in the character's growth. Slick and Squiggly began acting like straw men to disavow the author's past self. For example, his new stance against adult films. Porn isn't all bad. I mean, sure, much of it is exploitative, degrading, brutal, horrifying, and sad, but we must consider first of all that I like it a lot. Slick can't seem to shake her off, despite never caring in the past. Get out of my head! Get out of my head! Let Slick be Slick! Yes, yes, the voice of reason! Over time, Slick and Squiggly gradually faded from the spotlight. Tatsuya clearly felt very guilty for objectifying women in the past. Monique was never the same, viewing herself as a colluder, appeaser, and a sellout. The problem is that writing this as an internal conflict ends up speaking for and shaming many women. Even to those who agreed with his views, the framing felt conspiratorial and layered in self-loathing. But the cartoonist wasn't one to bow to criticism, and continued in this direction full steam ahead. Trike Girl tells Seymour to stay away from our uteruses, before it's shown she's too cool to be mocked by God and has no fear of the devil. Then she shows up in other comics to lecture Calvin and Charlie Brown, the latter of whom is served a restraining order for stalking the little redheaded girl. Now unable to stop seeing the code in the Matrix, Monique shaves her head and stops wanting to be seen as attractive by men. This culminates in her next performance as It Girl, where she gets heckled. Boo! That's not It Girl. More like It Thing. Where's the ass? Show us the ass! We want ass! We want ass! We want... You want to see ass? Look in the mirror. The result is her market value going down. She ends up meeting a young fan, a little girl she tries to lead down the path of feminism. A few days later, Slick questions if he's misogynistic, before the Matrix harasses him using his fragile masculinity. That's where 2011 ended off, and it's important to emphasize all of this took place over a few months. These events destabilized everything and set into place what would unfold over the next few years. Even Tats found himself asking, where am I going with all of this? Of course, we should also talk about another early sign of things to come. You see, one of Tatsuya's best strengths was how often he'd switch up art styles. A good example is the Reality Zone, which started as a simple visual contrast. It became a key plot element with a rule that magic beings couldn't exist within it. This was used to label religion as magical thinking. An early variation to this was the trans states, which swapped the entrance gender. When Slick first sees Monique's new haircut, he assumes she went into the trans states and calls her a slur. It's easy to overlook. The other strip with this premise isn't offensive, and in context he's the butt of the joke. But you can see the roots of modern Sinfest taking hold. Monique and Slick were driven apart, and now perpetually at odds. Before long, Trike Girl got between them directly. One comic shows a Madonna whore complex through the lens of their relationship. They're separated by Trike Girl, who inspires Monique to walk away. Many felt Slick's character was being sabotaged, an idea passively referenced in the comics. Man, life sucks. What are you looking at? Mind your own business. Trip, you made me do that. Trike Girl only rose in prominence from here. Her appearances can mostly be boiled down to Trike Girl wins and looks cool doing it. The way she's written never feels like there's any actual threat of danger. These powers got stronger and her victories easier over time. That March, we got a comic showing off the feminist sisterhood's secret base and learned her bike ran off dude bro tears. The closest she would get to a setback was when her bike got stolen. Of course, she uses secret tech to find its remains, accompanied by low-angle shots insisting how cool she is. After taking her bike to a sisterhood mechanic, it's revealed her real name is Zanzi Justice. Her tricycle is repaired, becoming even stronger than before. She earns the title Public Enemy No. 1, influencing Fushia, Criminy, God, and Lady Liberty. What's wrong, Liberty? Sammy. He's heavy into porn, makes me uncomfortable. Dump him. He keeps nagging me to watch it with him. Dump him now. Says having porn sex will be liberating and makes us stronger as a nation. Dump him yesterday. Before long, she was using Slick's tears to fuel her bike. Zanzi frequently bemoaned how there were no male allies, typically represented by Slick, who now declared himself an ally. Her character was also fleshed out to have a supportive nana and an online writing career. I believe life begins in the testicles and men are murdering their unborn children when they masturbate. Look at these cute sperm babies. Look at them. Stop the genocide. Criminalize male masturbators. While many assumed Tats had gone mad with self-hatred, many held out hope he might change. That perhaps Zanzi was misinterpreted. 2013 was the point where everything was ruined forever, when things go past the point of no return. Slick and Monique stop hanging out, admitting their dynamic just wasn't the same. Despite the heckling, Monique continues performing as It Girl, learning to deflect tomatoes. It's still demotivating, and in the aftermath, her and Slick have a conversation. You talked about feminism again, didn't you? Yeah. Shouldn't rile them up like that. You know how they get. What did you just say? What? You're saying I brought this on myself? No! I'm just saying, tone it down a bit. No one likes being hit over the head. Be more subtle. Subtle. All right, here's a subtle message for you. And just like that, she leaves, resulting in the permanent break between their characters and the end of over 13 years of development. Slick falls into the cult of masculinity, resulting in an evil satanic doppelganger named Sleaze. Monique's shadow similarly turns demonic, determined to protect her from rotten tomatoes. All the while, Zanzi fills her bike with God's male tears, before flying up to grab and shake him by the collar. This storyline was such a flagrant disregard for everything that had come before that many left accepting the story was over. If Trike Girl was powerful enough to slap God around, it was hard to imagine anything being a problem after that. There were also still quite a few unresolved storylines. Little Evil was confirmed to be Satan's son, although it was unclear why he abandoned him. Unfortunately, interest fizzled out, and the comic kept skewing toward Tatsuya's broader commentary on the world. One comic shows Uncle Sam eating the fruit of self-knowledge. I'm a racist, imperialist, genocidal dickbag, but I have a black friend. Quite on the nose, I must say. Tatsuya ignored the increasingly negative responses. It was easy to write off the backlash as sexist dude bros to him. He really liked unironically using the phrase dude bro, especially in reference to his own fans. Even at the time, it was obvious his beliefs weren't unanimous on his side of the political aisle, given many feminists were sex positive. This was a common critique at the time from left-wing audiences. Tatsuya Ishida's opinions are not representative of feminism. Instead, they speak of deep guilt about anything sexual. But none of these comics would be as upfront as his next arc, which unfolded a year later. Preachy, boring crap. I'm done with you. Done. Over. Finny. Goodbye. Goodbye. You're still here. I'll give you one more chance, but then that's it. Our next storyline begins with the creation of robots by Satan to tempt men into sin. Initially shown in 2006, the original idea was basically high-end love dolls. It wasn't until 7 years later that he began trying to use them to tell a story. The fembots were first hinted at by Milton, the Devil's Engineer. Whoa, I wish I could remote control her. He creates a prototype, leading to its mass production by Deviltech. Slick ends up buying one after his fallout with Monique. He tries bringing the fembot to the reality zone, which is when she breaks control and gains autonomy through autopilot mode. Next, a member of the Sisterhood infected the factory with a virus to turn them against their creators. This apparently involved infecting their minds with trafficking, female genital mutilation, and rape. The plan is so successful that the devil gives up and sucks on his own thumb. Meanwhile, the autonomous fembot continues on her way in a fun series of strips. Then she encounters the destroyed robots from the Sisterhood hack and scans their memories. The result was the birth of a new, still unnamed character fans referred to as Maverick, a reference to Mega Man. If it wasn't obvious by now, this was all an allegory for women being used as objects. When Maverick returns, we see her new programming in action. She scans the memory of a discarded robot and takes revenge on its owner for domestic abuse. It's clear that Tatsuya wanted scenes like these to elicit sympathy as a stand-in for women. But if we just look at their actions in the story, it's hard to say the devil's doing anything wrong. So far, we haven't seen their fembots actually harming people, making the Sisterhood effectively terrorists. Why is it wrong for the owner to discard his non-sentient fembot? These issues might be why her spree ended abruptly, softening a bit with more lighthearted variety. That changes after meeting a girl named Tanji, who helps Maverick discover her full capabilities. Of course, it was in Deviltech's best interest to shut her down. Milton would end up building an assassin designed to track Maverick. The assassin bot arrives soon after, interacting with other characters in her search. Then a fight breaks out between the two, only to end with both landing in the reality zone. The assassin bots join her side instantly. In response, after failing to regain control, Deviltech has their hitman self-destruct. This nearly drives Maverick to make an attempt on her own life, but she's stopped by Tanji, who nurses her back to health. She's taken back home where her rage is triggered by a commercial for fembots. With that, Maverick is back on the hunt, seeking revenge on its creator. This climax got a lot of build-up, with several pieces reflecting on her journey. Then on May 4th, 2014, Maverick finally lines up a shot and prepares to shoot Milton, only to see Slick and get distracted. Okay, let's backtrack for a second here. In the eyes of Tats, Slick had run his course as a character. He was a relic of the past, constantly complaining about the way things were now. He wept bitterly, not in a wah-wah cry-facey way, just a single tear streamed down his stoic, chiseled face. For he knew she no longer loved him. She had found someone else and left him all alone. Wah! With no real role in Sinfest at this point, Slick and Squiggly got assembly line jobs at Deviltech. This is why they were at the factory, and how the retired main character ended up with a gun in his face. A lot of readers genuinely thought he was going to kill off Slick entirely. You make fembots! No, we assemble drones. We're not engineers. But you would buy one? Whoa, hey, time out. You're malfunctioning. Let me fix you, please. You mean a lot to me. A lot. I'm not the one that needs fixing. Then she puts the barrel against his head. I can see you're a little upset. You feel used and exploited, and you're angry. I get it. I'm on your side. No, you're not. Blam! The shot turns out to be reinforcements from Deviltech, who apprehend Maverick and carry her away. Ultimately unharmed, Slick and Squiggly are both understandably shaken. Then Miss Justice drops in to give a cop-out so bad it undercut the entire year and a half of anticipation. What happened here? A fembot tried to kill us. She nearly blew my head off. She's out of control. I came this close to dying. This close. It's not loaded. Then she recommends they get trauma counseling. This is legitimately how all of this buildup resolves, letting the Sisterhood off the hook for creating killer robots and basically saying he got trolled. It diffused consequences for Maverick, likely in an attempt to keep the fembots sympathetic. This decision was so poorly received by the fan base which was left, it became a meme, with "it's not loaded" synonymous for a contrived tension, evaporating reveal. While we have alluded to the Sinfest audience a lot in this video so far, we haven't talked much about the comic's actual discussion forum. Sinfest's reader base changed a lot throughout its run, though they largely stayed on the same website. The political shift alienated many, but it also attracted a new wave of readers more closely aligned to feminism. Tats welcomed this at first, but as time went on, their difference in thought became more apparent. Throughout 2015, his criticism focused on sex work, arguing it was inherently exploitative. It was a natural evolution to his hatred of adult entertainment, which again felt like it stemmed from self-hatred. Mind you, he was saying this while still drawing those same exploited characters in revealing clothing and provocative poses, even doing panty shots for some of these victims. As mentioned earlier, his anti-sex work stance is far from unanimous among radical feminists. In fact, it's quite unpopular, with sex-negative activists usually referring to themselves as SWERFs. Sex work's exclusionary feminists. They would be at odds soon enough. Anyways, after the last storyline, there wasn't as much of a through line in 2015, instead focusing on demonstrating that all sex workers are being victimized. The Sisterhood's role kept growing, and now fighting a pimp bot and hordes of Johnbies, undead sex worker clientele. Johns quickly replaced dude bros in Tat's vocabulary. The cartoonist fantasized about attacking pimps and Johns, while disavowing what he called happy hooker propaganda. How do I keep from becoming a Johnbee? Don't watch porn, read radical feminism, don't treat women like commodities. Again, this is not a troll. Tatsuya's rhetoric became unavoidable. The breaking point was a strip posted May 6, 2018. It abandoned any pretense of a joke, with the middle panel showing a list of statistics he felt supported his argument against sex work. 89% of women want to leave. 68% meet criteria for PTSD. The average age of entry is 13, and legalization increases trafficking. This sparked debate on the forums over whether prostitution should be regulated or outright banned. Most were firmly pro-regulation, articulating how it didn't necessarily contradict radical feminism. Tats responded to this in a comic, often copy-pasting actual messages from the forum. This wasn't out of the ordinary. 2 years prior, he responded similarly to backlash over Monique coming out as gay. The new strip shows Miko, Monique's fangirl, going blah 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 before banning the poster. However, there was a key difference this time around. At the start of 2018, Tatsuya opened up a Patreon. This made it easier to quantify how much he was alienating his readers. Back in 2013, the comic was hitting 2 million readers a day. With the new Rad Fem turn, he only had about 500 loyal patrons. And every step of the way, he made sure to insult anyone who wasn't on board. His first response calls those in favor of regulation gross Johns. A gross John is trying to communicate with me. Sex servants are not victims. They are strong, choice-making adults. Stop treating them like babies unless that's your kink, then it's okay. If you have sex with them, but the way you do that's bad, worse than trafficking, which is also bad, but let's not talk about that, decrimify ga. It still doesn't make any sense. Then the fangirl goes on a spree banning more and more users, just as Tats did in real life. Though he perused the forum, it was rare for the cartoonist to post anything himself. He did chime in on his 10th post ever to defend a TERF amidst these debates. For those unaware, a TERF is online slang for a trans-exclusionary radical feminist. Tatsuya wasn't quite there yet. Naturally, discussion continued as some forum-goers argued Sinfest wasn't that feminist. Most of these posts weren't archived, though one user named Sam Sally wrote, Sinfest alienating what was originally a sympathetic audience with a message that's unclear, offers no solutions, and is tearing down the people it supposedly speaks for. Tatsuya retaliated months later by creating a new form more closely aligned to his beliefs. Although the old form stayed up, its days were numbered. This was honored in the strip with a new group of characters called the Witches Inn, who beat and rob Johnbies for money. It has been interpreted as a metaphor for the small group of fans he actually likes. Can we afford to turn away customers? These aren't customers, they're parasites. But don't we need their business? To survive? I would rather die 1,000 deaths than serve them. More tea, please. Interestingly, this actually led his patrons to grow, stabilizing around $1,560 a month. Those who stuck by him were extremely loyal, and that's really all you need to make it online. It also bears repeating that the art only got better with time, something even his critics couldn't deny. Tatsuya shut down the old form in December. The comic showed Johnbies being chased away with Kryptonite. This exodus is where the roots of Sinfest's online infamy took shape. Many dissenters migrated to other sites where they wrote in-depth explanations about its downfall. I've used a lot of these resources for this video, from the RIP Sinfest Tumblr blog to our Sinfest on Reddit. These communities were also filled with iconic fan art mocking the self-satisfied, male feminist author. This abundance of analysis helped these memes spread to a wider audience. Unfortunately for those jolted fans, it was just the beginning. Tatsuya doubled down, with his divisive rhetoric shifting to a new target. For some reason, in 2019, the Cartoonist would become very outspoken against trans people. Arguably, there were signs during his transition to radical feminism, like a comic joking about women going incognito into women's-only spaces. This ambiguity led a trans woman to create a thread on his new form. This resulted in a heated back and forth where he made a firm stance. "I'm not here to be silenced for my vocabulary, or to be pushed around. And we know how trans women often push around radical feminists when we decide to share the same space. And it's basically because of linguistics. Well, I mean no disrespect, but I ain't having none of that. If anyone thinks it's heretic to call a trans woman a male human being, even though that's the reason those people are trans in the first place, I'm not here to be unsinful." This message was spread around Tumblr as proof the Cartoonist was a bigot, and needless to say, he didn't deny it. Instead, the topic became a lot more prominent throughout 2019. To get back to the comic, the year started with the conclusion of a massive fight between the witches and a, quote, mecha pimp bot. The pimp controlling this robot falls to his death, freeing all the sex worker slaves in the Banff district of their debts. "You're free! Your debts are cancelled." What? Did Daddy say that? Where's Daddy? Daddy's dead. This leads into a series of strips titled Depression, where we see a few familiar faces. After performing as It Girl, Monique gets interviewed by Woke TV. "How has your fan base responded to your feminism?" Splat, splat, splat. It's been mixed. Then Miko asks, "What's wrong with men?" The interview seems to go well, as she gets to deride capitalism and the patriarchy, albeit at a very surface level. But not everything was as it seemed. Woke TV turns out to be an extension of Satan, who begins to champion social justice causes for his own gain. The messaging only gets less subtle from here. The next sequence, Level Up, has Miko and her friend Theo playing a video game. Miko destroys a fake ally before wandering into the gender pharmacy, emphasizing the harm in pharmacy. There she meets an undead pharmacist who indiscriminately offers gender pills, his take on hormone replacement therapy. The analogy only gets more and more extreme. The pharmacist goes from citing traditional gender roles to threatening to send her to gender camp for re-education. Following this, Theo is detained for playing with a Barbie doll, forcing her to rescue him. Unsurprisingly, the Zombies were succeeded by gender zombies. "Halt! You are in violation of Gender Code 217 Section 9. Produce your gender papers." "I'm a pan-fabulous goth gender mascara sexual. You may go." The in-universe world was suddenly obsessed with gender. While this took place in a video game, it ends with Miko confirming this was the comic's future. Whoa, what a game. Gender zombies, gender camps, gender pills. It felt so real. That's because it is. Tatsuya had made his views clear. He was now a trans-exclusionary feminist. In his mind, he had stood against the patriarchy on the right, and this was patriarchy on the left, ignoring any trans person that wasn't born a man. This is really the moment he gave up any pretense of Sinfest being anything but a vehicle for his own erratic beliefs. The next strip involves Trike Girl and a friend talking about neoliberalism and the gender matrix. The saga led to a mass exodus of fans, with his Patreon dipping to $1,488. This is foreshadowing, by the way. Much of the outrage was on Tumblr, documented by blogs like the Webcomics Review. Now, before we go any further, we should probably clarify the author's new beliefs as it heavily informs how he writes the story going forward. Tat saw trans people and their allies as gender conformists, backed by pharmacology and pornography lobbies. He targeted trans women, viewing them as men trying to parasite off the feminist movement. This belief changed a passive interest in Sinfest's decline to open contempt. There were numerous attempts to get him deplatformed, and his site was hit with DDoS attacks. Meanwhile, in the comics, we saw the first appearance of the Gender Church. Comparisons to religion was one of his usual punching bags for ideological enemies, in the same vein as his use of zombies, the devil, and jerk-ops. Oh wait, wrong comic. Monique meets with her girlfriend at this church, a demon named Abby who furthers the devil's interests. Abby reveals capitalism is booming. Their top-selling product? Gender. Gender? You mean this stuff? I guess, but new and improved. It's still war. War on women. This was shortly followed by Woke Man Signal, a one-off gag with a quote-unquote new baddie. Out sex buyers. Says women don't have penises. Yikes, she is super gross. On June 13th, 2019, Tatsuya responded to the growing backlash directly in Sinfest. The comic begins with a horde of gender zombies surrounding his home. Gah, we are concerned about the direction of your work. Be a shame if you got cancelled. You don't want to get cancelled, do ya? Interestingly, one of the zombies is a caricature of a real person, with their original shirt reading, I punch TERFs. Now it reads, I punch women. They throw things through his window before Trike Girl, his own character, welcomes him to the revolution. The next phase starts with the reveal that a new face has taken over the Banff district. This woke pimp instead sells emotional labor, forcing his girls to validate people they couldn't stand. They were named and modeled after the story of The Handmaid's Tale, which had just been adapted to a television series in 2017. State your purpose. To serve male desire, fulfill male fantasies, validate male identities. Because I choose to. Check complete. The validate male identities is a really good example of how he tried to make his transphobia into an anti-misogyny thing. Deviltech also creates pimp drones which can alter someone's mind. Little goes to Gender Church, really hammering home the comparison to religion. Then he begins training to rule the world and ascend to the throne, turning out to be the Antichrist. For the other characters, the world is turning to hell around them. Immediately after, we see boxes of woke being shipped into the devil's factory. Of course, there's the obligatory woke drones. Tolerance, love, acceptance. Join the love parade or we'll cancel you. Then he depicts cyberbullies in an allegory to the DDoS attacks on his site. Woke TV ends up approaching Fushia, getting her interest after revealing the It Girl piece was seen by millions. Other programs on the channel include Woke Jesus, which references being called a swerf and a TERF, and gender non-conforming G.I. Joe. Then he does a gag with the woke drones about Donald Trump being orange. Halloween followed one of the handmaids lashing out, destroying one of her pimp's drones. This revealed a new side of herself that could be honest about how she felt, eventually leading to a wider revolt. You're just like all the other men, coming in here with your money, picking us out like meat. I despise you. Gah, I want to speak to the manager. There's also another storyline revolving around Uncle Sam and Lady Liberty. Their relationship deteriorated, and by 2019 he was posing with cardboard cutouts of her to make it seem like he was still with Liberty. That December, she was captured by the pimp bots and reprogrammed into an emotional labor slave. Thankfully, Liberty uses the power of her crown to break free, destroying the woke pimp's image in his Gender Church. Uncle Sam, meanwhile, is at home trying to remake her with an AI chatbot. Woke pimp is injured, Liberty leaves, and that's where the comic ended when we began 2020. Assessing the damage of this absurd plotline, his Patreon took a decline again, now at just $1,000 a month. The forums were dead with hardly 15 posts a month. If Sinfest was to survive, Tatsuya needed to be able to reach new eyes. With this, the cartoonist finally joined social media for the first time, registering an account on Twitter in late 2019. Within months, his profile hit 10,000 followers, and new strips regularly gained 1,000 likes. This, of course, came with increased notoriety, especially given how prominent the trans community was on Twitter. Most of the people aware of this strip on Twitter moving forward had no context to what it once was. To them, it was just another political comic that popped up in the same wave as artists like Stone Toss. A lot of people who only know about it through memes are surprised to find out it was already 30 years old at this point. February 23, 2020 was the webcomic iteration's 20th anniversary. The only person to notice remembered several days late, and no one else replied. The year started with an odd tangent in the comic, taking aim at surrogacy and arguing cutting up women was a patriarchal business. Getting back to the comic's plot, the woke pimp survives and Milton takes his place, finally assuming control of his creations. Monique tries to protest, causing her to get snatched up by the pimp bot. Luckily, the Sisterhood is there to film the act and broadcast it to the entire world. The comic takes a slight detour to reflect the ongoing pandemic, beginning his lockdown strips that April. Screw this lockdown, I'm going out. Give me liberty or give me death. 2020, or at least Tat's personification of the year, starts as an infant. Her stork is shot down and she's groomed by the devil into becoming a fabulous model. This comic notably has the Bilderberger. 2020 sucks, look at her. What a sellout. Gold digging bimbo. 2020's a hoe. You don't know her story. You don't know what she's been through. You don't know anything about her. You don't know. The reality leads Monique to start the Free 2020 movement, only to face crackdowns from the ever-growing power of Devilcore. That included introducing a mode for the fembots. Woke mode, you can't say that. Hate speech, bigot, 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 bigot. This basically amounted to calling any feminist that disagreed with him NPCs and Karens. There isn't a good reason for why the devil would make this pivot, but the story is always secondary at this point. Men who can't admit their privilege are so sexy. I'm so privileged. I have white privilege. I have male privilege. Straight privilege. Keep going. Able-bodied privilege, cis privilege. You are disgusting. I am disgusting. Alongside Twitter, Tatsuya also joined Spinster, a Twitter alternative for exclusionary radical feminists. Sounds like a fun place to hang out. He shared exclusive comics and weighed in on current events there. When J.K. Rowling, creator of Harry Potter, was accused of being transphobic, he stood in her defense. He was one of 50 literary figures to sign a letter in support of her amidst the backlash. A lot was happening this year, from COVID to George Floyd protests, and Sinfest's commentary only became more explicit. Bros, are you like stealing shit? We are fighting injustice, standing up for oppressed people everywhere. Okay, cause it looks like you're stealing shit. In a twist right out of an M. Night Shyamalan film, readers noticed a growing sympathy towards Christianity and the American right, something that came to fruition in 2020 entirely. The year started with a comic comparing Antifa to MAGA, 2 days before January 6th. Following the insurrection, Tats shifted from treating both sides like the problem to fully supporting MAGA. Before long, Sinfest is following a sympathetic Trump-supporting family, fighting off the woke drones in a left-wing fascist dystopia. The rhetoric changed from highlighting human trafficking and sick elites and lightly ribbing QAnon. It wasn't necessarily a huge shift from his previous rhetoric, but instead its natural conclusion. His critique of the left stopped coming from the left. Monique similarly becomes disillusioned, especially when rioters destroy Trike Girl's grandmother's cafe. How goes the resistance? I don't know, it doesn't feel right, like it's been co-opted. Oh no. Here, this'll cheer you up. Communist merch. Eventually she ditches socialism entirely. The chaos in the summer of 2020 clearly changed Tats. Sinfest goes from mocking a straw man like Seymour to empowering characters for their sincere belief in God. They even start quoting passages from the Bible. Trump supporters are shown getting thrown out of the town square, while left-wingers destroy and oppress. His topics shifted from big tech to anti-vaxxing, all with the underlying theme of saving America. Gentlemen, cities burn, churches empty, media, academia, government all captured. To the new dark age. The devil impresses Monique, and she ends up living in his mansion. There you are, where were you? Watching the world burn and descend into a dystopia hellscape? We're doomed. Well, your shadow's happy. She seemingly develops feelings for the devil and becomes openly transphobic for no reason, another radical change for the character. By 2022, Sinfest had fully descended into conspiracy theories. He defended Kanye, stating he flew too close to the sun and the brain rot led to things like the woke Joker. Several comics from this year were turned into ironic exploitables, becoming memes. Meanwhile, at the Bilderberg meeting, Lex Leather. Soon, humanity will be enslaved in our global dungeon of pleasure. Pfizero. Grunt. Administro. Admin power, yes. The Gender Riddler. Gender me this. There was no consistency, and now chastising the left for making men walk on eggshells. Tatsuya's Patreon dwindled down to less than 800. Then on December 7th, his account was banned for promoting sentiments of discrimination based on gender identity or sexual orientation. His tweet announcing this got 2,000 likes, and he drew a comic about it 2 days later. This is your shadowy overlord. Comply or we will kill your revenue stream. I don't know who you are or what you want, but I have a very particular set of skills. Arts and craft skills. I will find you, and I will draw you most unflatteringly. The next day, he was banned from Ko-Fi, a similar service. Tatsuya moved over to alternatives like Subscribestar, Substack, and Locals. The Witch's In forum was also shut down after years of inactivity. Unsurprisingly, his rhetoric only grew more inflammatory as the years passed, indistinguishable from something you would read on Poll. Isengard is at your command, Lord Zion. Destroy the White City. With a military invasion? No, with migration and culture. Memes like Pedo Bear, the NPC, and other Wojaks start showing up. Monique has some sort of trad arc, tapping into her dark side and restoring her faith in God. It isn't long until Monique is co-starring in strips with Pepe the Frog. Who runs the world? Jews. Jews run this mother. You can't say that. That's anti-Semitic. They can say it. We can't. Their previous characterization was abandoned aside from the occasional reference to the past. This might unintentionally be the saddest ending possible to the original will they won't they scenario in the comic from 20 years earlier. Slick is now a disposable extra in his own story. The last remnant of his love is an AI-built simulation of a girl that rejected him and went off the deep end almost a decade prior. 2023 had Thanos, a parody of Thanos, fighting Super Karen, as well as the Boner comic. He continued voicing support for individuals like the creator of Dilbert, Scott Adams, who was cancelled after making racist comments on his YouTube channel.
The best advice I would give to white people is to get the hell away from black people.
A sinner comes before you. Shame, shame. Stay strong, brother. A sequel strip portrayed Trump in Biden's America. After the October 7th attack in Israel, Tatsuya made a string of comics about Zog, an online dog whistle for Zionist-occupied government. Its usage is controversial among critics of Israel due to its association with neo-Nazis. Sinfest dives straight in, even depicting a so-called Zog factory, which showed NPCs being programmed in Epstein's secret island temple. Comfortably entertaining the theory of a Jewish cabal ruling the world, he doubled down further in 2024. They're making it illegal to say Jews run the world. What? I have to take down my neon sign and delete my website and cancel my daily skywriting? This year he dabbled in esoteric Nazism, the fusion of Nazi ideology with mystical or occult tradition. Tatsuya also embraced neo-paganism, portraying Greek gods and their worshippers in a story called Down the Rabbi Hole. This includes an unironic My Ancestor scene, even though Tats isn't white. My blood, my people, my God. Any last words, my child? Hail Odin! They are being subverted by the Jewish god Yahweh, who manipulates others to lose faith and rebel. Needless to say, when he released a strip seeming to portray the Nazis in a positive light, there wasn't much surprise left. Funnily enough, this shift toward paganism divided his fan base further. The non-pagans got angry. He lumped all Abrahamic religions together as Jewish. This storyline ends with a Jew killing the Greek baby, before the mother publicly lynches him. No description of modern Sinfest could do it justice compared to just reading some of his 2025 comics so far. In one post, we see Ben Shapiro leaving the Daily Wire in his Jew escape pod. This strip is called Planet of the Jews. We see a black man and a white man bumping shoulders. Walking around like you own the place, don't you know? This ain't your country no more. It ain't yours either. Epstein is also officially a canon event in the universe. In the same way Slick represented Tat's past self during the Radfem era, Monique now represents his past self in the JQ era. Why are so many Radfems pro-Israel? All of the big TERFs are Zionists. How? Why? Jews. What? Jews take over all movements. That's ridiculous. Can't be true. Can it? Her most recent appearance was in a comic titled Just Say Jews. And with that, we've reached the present day, with modern Sinfest unrecognizable from even a few years ago, let alone 10, 20, or 30. Just for fun, before we finally reach the end of this long journey, let's take a look at the last time those previously main characters have been seen. Credit to Reddit user Trim345 for compiling this information. Slick and Squiggly were last seen in 2024 talking about, you guessed it, the Jews. Little E hasn't shown up since 2023 in a comic about him wanting to be an angel. Criminy has been missing for over 3 years, never reappearing after the trio fled death. As for the Sisterhood, Trike Girl has been noticeably absent since 2022, and has only returned in flashback. Miko is slowly realizing Adolf was right all along. And the religious characters have turned into propaganda machines, with the devil last seen calling the Israelis his chosen people. With that, we finally reach the present day, with Sinfest being nearly 34 years old. That includes over 25 years of consistent daily output. The art style, characters, and even purpose of Sinfest has changed so drastically it's hard to comprehend sometimes this all is one continuous comic. Its recent infamy has led it to become widely known as the Boner comic, just another of many tired partisan political strips on Twitter. It's shocking to understand the sheer amount of history there is, especially when you see there was a completely different status quo before it, one that had retained a loyal audience for 10 years. Tatsuya is now around 53, with Sinfest having been around for most of his life. His work is perhaps more honest about his ideological shift than he is. The start of his political awakening hinged on his own shame. He was insecure about the comic's lack of depth and felt guilty about acting like a sleaze. That guilt evolved into an obsessive self-hatred, one that vilified the supposedly morally inferior. Sinfest had a conspiratorial view of the patriarchy, seeing it as an intentional plot. He reiterated no male allies while being a male ally that constantly sexualized exploited women. It doesn't feel wrong, but incomplete to say he's fear-mongering. He genuinely seems paranoid, and it's probably more accurate to say he's the one being fear-mongered. That isn't to downplay how dangerous his rhetoric has become, but to explain why he was so eager to uproot everything for those drastic changes in the first place. To his credit, unlike many political cartoonists, he seemingly isn't a grifter. To give the devil his due, every step along the way he's shown that he sincerely believes all the crazy things he writes. I do have to wonder how it feels to witness all of this as someone who simply likes Sinfest for what it originally was, a funny lighthearted comic with a cast of relatable characters. I mentioned this earlier, but many would end up writing detailed breakdowns of the comic's history, analyzing its themes and even connections to other literature. Who is this single Sinfest fan who has followed it through to its ends, going along with every ideological shift just as Tats has? I genuinely just have to wonder if that person exists. In conclusion, I am enamored by the story of Sinfest more than most I cover. The concept that Tatsuya made Slick as a self-insert for himself when he was young, only to slowly resent the character when his ideologies became more extreme as he hit middle age, and now uses him as a straw man for what he feels is wrong with the world, is something that should be studied. I can't help but wonder if the reason a lot of these webcomic artists go off the deep end is because of isolation, spending a majority of their time alone in a room drawing strips. That would make sense considering it appears he got even crazier during COVID. The man hasn't been seen in years, so being terminally online has probably only exacerbated the issue. Now it's just a waiting game to see if his ideology bounces to another extreme corner of the political spectrum in the years to come.